Welcome to a very special edition of the 25th Hour podcast, the Uncover Your Productivity Bottleneck edition. I'm your host, Lisa Crilly-Malice, and I was able to speak with 4 different business owners who own 4 completely different businesses. Welcome to another edition of Guess Your Productivity Bottleneck in 3 questions or less. Today's guest is Amy Williams, and Amy is the CEO of AB Unlimited, and they are a marketing resource agency. And so thank you, Amy, for coming today.
I'm so excited to be here and working with the great Lisa Malice.
That's what I like to hear. Why? Thank you very much for that. All right, so we're going to jump right in. Question number 1, what do you find will prevent you from getting the things that you want to get done?
Fear of the reaction or the intended consequence or the result of the task. I fear that it might not be the result that I want, so I just put it off.
Ooh, okay. Tell me a little bit more give me an example of where you've seen this.
Well, for instance, if there is a project that is overdue and I know it needs to get done and someone else is waiting on my end of the project so they can do what they need to do, and so much time has gone by, I get fearful that this person or the person that needs my work product is going to be angry or is going to be unhappy. So then I just end up not doing it at all.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to dig in at this from a different angle. So I'm going to ask you a different question. What is happening to cause you to be behind on a project?
Being spread too thin on the many tasks and the components that need to be coordinated and completed in order to do the overall picture, the overall product or project. So if I am not quick to respond with delegating the tasks that need to be completed, then I take everything on myself and then nothing ever gets completed.
Okay. And follow-up question to that one. Anything other than, so one of the things you said was if you're not quick enough to delegate, that's one of the reasons that you might be spread too thin. What else would, if anything, would cause you to feel like you were spread too thin?
Having too many projects in too quick of a deadline and assuming too much without saying no to certain things that I should be saying no to.
Another follow-up question to that, give me an idea of what are some things that you should say no to that you're not?
For instance, we've worked hard on qualifying our client roster, and there will be people who we have certain criteria, certain projects that work well between the clients and our company, and then we'll get the odd requests that will take time away and will deviate from that process that we've already put in place. And it's not a fit for our company, but because I can't say no to this person, I end up taking a project that is not suitable at all for our company.
Okay. And so then the third question that I have for you is, what % of projects that you are working on do you feel fall outside of what you've already identified are the pieces that are the types of projects for the types of clients that you want to work with?
I want to say conservatively, I want to say 30%, but I think that's being ultra conservative. I probably think it's closer to 15 to 20% of my time, which is still enough to derail procrastination and getting things completed on time.
Yes.
So I would say probably 15 to 20%.
Okay. All right. So I've asked my 3 questions. And so here is my assessment of your productivity bottleneck. And what that is not following your processes. So you've set up processes on who to delegate and what types of things get delegated. And you've also set up processes on who's the ideal client, who isn't. You've set up, and you and I have spoken before. So I'm letting everyone who's watching this know this is not a cold thing. Amy and I have spoken before, and this is not something that has come up in any of our previous conversations. So I do know that you have processes around when to work, when, those types of things. And so what I'm seeing is you're not following them. So tell me, does that feel like the right bottleneck for you or not?
It feels like it's the right bottleneck in terms of I need to get better with discipline and getting into a habit. And the reason why I know that would work if I just got into the habit, on a daily basis is because I recently started walking 2 miles every morning as soon as I get up. No matter in my pajamas, whatever, I get on that treadmill and I start walking 2 miles. That's my commitment to myself. And it was hard. And after 3 days, I wanted to not do it, but I did it in my pajamas because I didn't want to get dressed and get the right gear and all that nonsense. So it's been 9 days so far and I haven't deviated. I've been able to do it. So I know that if I put myself into habits, it will become automated. It will become like clockwork for me to do that. So I'm looking forward to working on my discipline.
And so if we look at this in a 3-step process, if we look at it through the dream, decide, design process, which is not something yet that I have shared out through my social media and e-blast list, it's what we just did was the dream part. And the dream part is, what do you want? Where are you currently at? But the part that we just dug into was what is the actual challenge. So like it started out as the fear of failure, fear of what's going to happen. But really what it is not following the actual process that you already have in place. Then the next part is decide. And that's the place where you get to decide, okay, what am I doing now? What will I do? And so your piece is, okay, I have the processes in place. I need to create them as habit. And then that last piece of it is the design piece. And this is the place where I always think there's that extra oomph, because it's how do we create that design piece in a way that does not 100% rely on your willpower? Because there will be days, like you said, all right, you push through it. Well, there will be days where maybe you just don't have the willpower to push through. How do you make that happen? So in this case, how do we design it so that when someone contacts you for a quote or to work with you, and you recognize they are not your ideal person, how do you design the process in a way that you can say no instead of taking on work that isn't the right fit work for you, that puts you behind on the work that is the right fit work for the clients that you best serve? And so it's like, that's the piece, that's the extra piece. So how does that feel? That process, those ideas?
It feels like you've given me permission to explore and not be afraid to work on bottlenecks that could really derail a company. So I feel relieved.
Yes. I always say my work here is done. I've given you permission to say no. I've given you permission to explore. This is awesome. So thank you, Amy, for being a guest today. We did it. We guessed your productivity bottleneck in 3 questions or less. If you are a business owner and you are wondering, I wonder what my bottleneck is, then I invite you to apply to be a contestant on our show at impactivestrategies.as.me. So thanks again, Amy. Welcome to another episode of Guess Your Productivity Bottleneck in 3 questions or less. Today's guest, as you can tell, this is going to be lots of fun. Today's guest is Arielle Minicozzi Figueroa, and she is the founder and CTO of Sphynx Automation. They're the automation experts for fintech and service-based professionals. Welcome, Arielle.
Welcome. Thank you, Lisa.
Are you ready to play?
I'm ready, Lisa. Let's go.
All right. So question number 1, what is preventing you from getting everything that you want to get done each day?
Oh boy, it's definitely me, of course. Isn't that I would say for sure though, being totally honest, I have procrastination because I have anxiety around things I think are going to take long. And it's funny, I was actually just talking to Mark, my husband slash business partner, about this last night. And I said to him, I have this problem. Whenever I think something's going to take super long, I put it off and I try to work on anything else. Not because I think it's going to be hard, but just because I'm like, oh, I don't want to sink that much time into it. But lo and behold, I end up spending more time procrastinating on whatever I was supposed to be doing than I would have done doing it. And when I finally get around to it, it ended up only taking me like 10, 15 minutes at the most. That's not a long time.
Not at all. And so question number 2, has this always been a challenge or is it something recent?
I think it's been more recent, to be honest with you, Lisa. I've never been one to procrastinate in general, but I just feel like this year has been so crazy. We've been traveling, we've had an election, we've had COVID, we've had all kinds of unexpected turns of event. And I think that my mental state, just in general, has been, okay, I'm ready to have a little bit of a break. And that builds up and spills over into my work life.
Okay. So question number 3, fingers crossed. What is talk to me about your self-care routine.
For me, self-care involves getting a good night's sleep. I am not a morning person if I do not get a full 8 or 9 hours. I can thrive on less if I have to, or I should say, rather, I can survive on less if I have to, but I thrive when I get a really good night's sleep. So for me, self-care means unplugging all electronics, getting into bed at a reasonable time, waking up, having a nice cup of coffee, and starting my day off on the right foot.
Okay. And I'm going to follow up to that question. What, if anything, do you do throughout the day to kind of relax and reset your brain?
I try to walk during the day. It's a little colder now, but we're still in Arizona, so it's certainly not as bad as in many other places. So if I am feeling overwhelmed, one of the self-care strategies that I use is to get up, stand away from my computer, take a walk around the block, drink some water, maybe even eat some lunch if it's getting late and I haven't stopped to take a break and eat, and then come back with a clear mind. And usually that really helps get me back on track.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. So here's what I know about procrastination, and we're going to get to your bottleneck. The procrastination is usually caused by one of 2 things: a lack of space in your brain and or a lack of structure. And so what I'm hearing is the space in your brain piece, you have it handled because you're able to come down, relax throughout the day if you need to. You know what triggers your overwhelm. You get a good night's sleep. So it isn't that lack of space, like that lack of space in the brain. It's the lack of structure. And so what I mean by that, if we're looking at this from what you shared earlier about procrastination, is that project list. When you're doing a project, when you look at things that you start to procrastinate on, are you estimating steps, number of steps needed to do it, amount of time for each step, anything like that?
Yes, absolutely. And I have a Trello board for every project detailing out all the steps that need to be completed. And I think for me, it's looking at that list and not just looking at the thing that's next on the list that I have to do, but thinking ahead to all the 800 other steps that follow it.
Okay. And so that's the place where you're getting stuck.
Definitely.
Is the 800 steps that follow it. Okay. So so right there, so you called it right at the beginning. Procrastination is your piece. And it was figuring out which of the 2 pieces was it. And it's not brain space, it's the structure piece. And so then your next part is to figure out how can you create that bridge so that you're not stopped because you're looking at the next 800.
Yeah, you're right.
Just looking at the next one, and then the next one.
Definitely. I know that to be so true. You hit the nail on the head, Lisa.
Yes, good. You had me there for a minute. I was like, I think she's got a really good feel for what it is. Let's see if we can dig a little deeper. So what we just went through, and for those of you who are watching this live, what we went through was the AWE process: awareness, work, and evaluation. So the awareness is the place where we dig in and find the actual real problem. So Arielle was right. It is procrastination. And she's doing half of it already. And so that's your W piece, that work piece. She already has the self-care taken care of, in the quiet time and the space to reset her brain. And on the work end, she's already doing the important W stuff as far as breaking out the project. And still, it's not enough. It's that next piece of, how do I just focus on what's in front of me and turn off the rest? And so that's the piece to create, whatever that may look like. It may be a setting on the Trello board where you can hide the rest as you do it. It could be a Post-it note on the computer hiding the rest, or one that says focus on only this one. Like, that's that work phase. That's the part where you look at what's the structure I can put in so that I'm actually looking at the next item and not all the rest. And then that last phase is E, for evaluation. And this is the part that we can fix something and then not come back to make sure either A, it actually worked, our solution, or B, that there wasn't unintended consequences. And that happens a lot, where we'll fix one thing and then the trickle down effect means that there's some other things that happen along the way that get a lot out of balance. And so that's your E, evaluation part of the AWE method. I just want to go back in and make sure. So whatever you choose as your, I'm only going to focus on this right now solution, you want to check back in a couple of days and make sure it hasn't caused another problem along the way. So thank you for playing. I'm super excited. We got to dug in a little bit deeper and found your bottleneck. How'd it feel?
Great, actually. You really hit the nail on the head. I appreciate that so much.
Oh, it is always my pleasure. And those of you watching, if you want to play too, and you're willing to share what's going on in your life with those around in the group, please post below and we will make that happen.
Thank you so much, Lisa. And thank you everybody for watching. We'll see you next time.
Welcome to another episode of Guess Your Productivity Bottleneck in 3 Questions or Less. Today's guest is Liz Radivoyevitch, co-owner of Rad Graphics, where they are a marketing and graphics design firm. Thank you, Liz, for playing along.
Oh, thank you for inviting me, Lisa.
I know this is going to be tons of fun.
I'm sure.
So question number 1 is, what prevents you from getting everything you want to get done each day?
Interruptions.
Okay, tell me more. And by the way, just in case you're counting questions, that's a follow-up question to the first one. It's not a brand new question.
Oh, okay. Well, I like to schedule out my day. I like to plan, like, okay, this is my block for this. This is my block for that. This is my block to get work, the actual work I do done. And it's always inevitable that something out of my orbit, like, comes in and says, I need this, like, by, 2 p.m. And it's like, because a lot of our clients are longstanding clients. So it's like, we do what we need to do to make sure that they get what they need done. So yeah, some of it's that, some of it's internal, where it's like between myself and, somebody who works here that needs something right away. And I kind of know, does that kind of help?
It does. It helps.
Okay.
Yeah, it helps flush it out. How often and this is question, we will call this question too. How often do you get those last minute requests from clients? Like, what % of the time do you think?
What % of the time? I would say probably 20% of my, when I look at the whole week, probably 20% is kind of taken away by kind of like an emergency or a last minute request that needs to be dealt with right away.
And when you say clients, or when you say 20% is a last minute request, does that include clients and things coming internally, or is it different? But it's total 20%?
Yeah, I would say. Or maybe a little more, maybe like 22.
Oh, 22.3754. Okay, so 22%. And so then my question number 3 is, how much open white space do you have on your calendar?
Not much, and that's what frustrates me. because a lot of what I'm like doing, especially now, because it's like crunch time, like for whatever reason, this is always a time when everybody's trying to, get in a last minute project or something like that. And, if I feel like a lot of my day is completely scheduled, and so, yeah, I feel like I don't have the room for it. And so it sort of ekes into a weekend, or it ekes into later at night.
Okay. So then a follow-up question on that is, how much of the work that you're doing is the work that is your zone of genius work?
Oh boy. Okay. I think probably if it's emergency stuff, I would say probably very little.
All right, so very little of the very little of the emergency stuff is your zone of genius.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
All right. So I am going to say that your productivity bottleneck is that you have the opportunity to create, see how I phrase that for you? You have the opportunity to create a new process so that that emergency stuff goes to the person whose zone of genius it is versus it defaulting to you.
Yep. I love it. I love it already.
Okay. How does that feel like it's?
Yeah, you know what? It just kind of, as I said that, I was like, oh, I should do this. I should actually have, I should have like a hit list of other people that can be brought in, depending on the emergency or the last minute request.
Right,
So,
right. Or the
yeah.
fire, like whatever phrase you want to put around it.
Yep.
Oh, awesome. All right. So those of you who are watching right now, who are watching from home or wherever you're watching from, the process that we just went through with Liz is a 3-step process. And it's awareness, work, and evaluation. It's the all process. And the awareness is around digging in and finding what is the actual block or bottleneck. And in this case, it isn't really the fires as you would initially think.
Yep.
It's when we dig a little bit deeper, it's the fact that the work coming in last minute isn't getting to the correct person to do the work. And so then that W phase, which is the work phase, would be actually, and Liz just said it, I need to create this like punch list of things so that I know this goes here, this goes here, this goes there when it comes in.
Mm-hmm.
And then that E phase would be the evaluation phase, which is, did the solution we created
Did it
create
work?
more or fewer problems? Because sometimes there's unintended consequences, and you solve one problem only to open the door to 6 or 7 more.
Yeah.
And so that's the process that you go through. Sound good?
That sounds good. It's on my to-do list.
Fantastic. If you would like to play along, feel free to go to impactivestrategies.as.me and fill out an application to be our next business owner, to be spotlit, to be on, whatever the word is, to be on the Guess Your Productivity Bottleneck in 3 questions or
To be unbottlenecked, yes.
Yes, to be unbottlenecked.
Yay!
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you. Welcome to the next episode of Guess Your Productivity Bottleneck in 3 questions or less. Today's guest is Scott Sapita, who is the GM and owner of BaseTek. Thank you, Scott, for joining us.
Glad to be here.
I'm so excited. All right, so here's what we're going to do. I'm going to ask you 3 questions. There may be follow-up questions along the way. So those of you counting at home, don't hold that against me. We're going to see if we can dig into whatever it is that might be holding Scott back from getting everything he wants to get done in the day. So tell me, Scott, what do you feel is what's happening right now that you're not getting it all done?
Being pulled in too many different directions, different priorities, and also the fact that I work in 2 different locations makes it somewhat of a struggle with different team members.
Okay, so tell me a little bit more about feeling like you're pulled in different directions. That's a follow-up question for those of you counting.
The between customer requirements, because I service customers, trying to focus and grow and spend time on the business, the things that I want to do as far as growing and managing the business always take a back seat to the current customer needs and things that pop up in a given day. So I'll have good plans, but I get sidetracked so quickly, and I have trouble getting back on those tasks.
Okay. And what is your best and highest use at the company, or your zone of genius? Like, what is it that truly only you can do?
Oh, that's a tough question. Long-term strategy, growth, productivity, profitability challenges, and growth, and things from a real high-end level. The issue with us is that we have a lot of people that can do a lot of different things. So maybe that's part of the issue, is that we possibly don't delegate tasks well enough. But it seems like I get sucked into the day-to-day stuff way too more frequently than I'd like.
Okay. And how much of the time each day do you feel that you're spending on tasks that don't fall into that zone of genius, highest use of your time?
Probably 70%.
Okay. All right. So this will come to no shock to you, but your bottleneck is to offload those tasks that truly are not of your best and highest use. And so if we think that through, it seems easy to say that. And so it's more of a taking that step back and looking very systematically at what are the pieces that are coming in that you're saying yes to, and who could say yes instead. Because it's easy for me to say, no, look, Scott, here's the deal. You're the owner and GM. You need to do owner and GM stuff. It's another thing to look at, okay, how do you implement that? And in your case, based on a conversation we had a year ago around fires and things like that, I think it's going back and revisiting what specifically is pulling you away and who else has the skill set to handle it, and then creating the structure to move it from your plate to theirs. Does that make sense?
Right. It does.
Yeah.
It does. And a part of that is my ability to take a step back and let things happen a little bit slower. So there are other people, Lisa, that could do the work. There's no doubt. But I guess my feeling is I'm impatient. I want to make sure we get those opportunities and we succeed.
Yeah. And so I think there's a opportunity to not look at as either or, black, white, you, not them, but more of a maybe even a you support them in the beginning stage as you're building that bridge to start to pull yourself back a little bit more and back into your zone of genius, your place.
Right.
Because obviously there's an urgency. Absolutely. And you have great people who work with you, and they have great skill sets. And so there's that piece. So how do you feel? Do you feel we identified the bottleneck?
Oh yeah, I think we identified it. I think you hit it. The question is, how do I get through it? That's the big issue.
Exactly.
It's easier said than done.
Right. Exactly. And I think the way through is one, what is that? How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. It isn't flipping the switch today.
Yeah.
And saying, that's it. I'm going back to doing just the things that only I can do. But it's one task, one person with support. And then the next task with that person with support.